What is a hacker and what do they do?
It's somebody who essentially breaks things apart and understands how they work. You can give people an image or photo and they can tell you exactly where it was taken, what device took the photo. As we get into this world where they realize data is the new oil, you sort of living footprint of data in everything that you do digitally. Updates are very important. Any software, you need to constantly update it. That's because they find out what these vulnerabilities are that are being exploited by the bad guys, and the manufacturer sort of obviously closes those gaps. When you look at cybersecurity, it's all about a certain type of persona. The person is always curious. The person who wants to know how things work. The person who tinkers. The person who innovates. I'm one of those persons that actually realize that growth comes on the edge of your comfort level.
Welcome back to the For This Reason podcast. My guest today is a seasoned technologist, a cybersecurity specialist with a career spanning over a decade in the ICT sector, specializing in cybersecurity. Welcome, Edison Mazibuko.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation to learn about cybersecurity and really understand what it is and how it all works. So I think let's start in the beginning. Did you ever plan this? Did you, from a young age, know that this is where you wanted to land up in cybersecurity?
You know, I tell people I'm one of the lucky few that's always known where I wanted to go, right? I mean, the love for IT and computers started very early. When I was in high school already, I already knew that that's the path I was going to go to. So yeah, it started very early.
Okay, nice. And I mean, what spurred that love for computers and tech at a young age?
I was fascinated about these things called computers and what they could do, right? So at a young age, we had these computer boxes that we could open up and, look inside, figure out how they work, swap parts, and that was so fascinating, right? And as I learned what computers could do, I got into the world of hackers and, what they actually do using computers. And that was like, okay, whoa, I need to dive a bit more deeper into this, right? So that's where the bug essentially bit.
Wow.
I mean, at that time, there would have been like movies like, what is it, Swordfish, Hackers, those type of movies. Those kind of, brought it to the limelight, and you're like, your curiosity sort of gets the better of you, and you're like, let me research a bit more about this.
Wow, let's talk about that, because I've always wondered, what is a hacker and what do they do?
Sure. A hacker, so it's somebody who essentially breaks things apart and understands how they work. So yes, the computer people have sort of taken on the term, but it's actually deeper than that. It talks about any facet of life. You can be a biohacker, in a bio space. You could be any type of hacker, but just in the computer sense, it's somebody who essentially sees technology, wants to understand how it works, breaks it apart, tinkers with it, and makes it do what it wasn't initially intended for it to do. So that's what is a hacker. And I think I wouldn't be doing justice if I didn't quickly explain. So a lot of people see hackers as the bad guys. But the core term is the hackers are the good guys and the crackers are the bad guys.
Okay.
Right? So the term hackers sort of stuck and people started using that. But now how we differentiate that is that we say you're a black hat hacker if you do it for evil, if you use those skills for bad, right? And you're a white hat hacker if you're on the good side and you protect organizations and people. So
that's so interesting.
Trivia,
very, very interesting to hear about that. But I mean, when we talk, and I think let's maybe begin here, because when one says cybersecurity, one just thinks, okay, these are good people that keep my banking app good, or safe. But we've never really understood what is it. What is cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's let me answer it by bringing it closer to home, right? So we've given my son a mobile device. It's an old phone we've given to him that he can use on weekends and so forth for games and that sort of thing. And when we gave him that phone, I had to teach him what the internet is and what the dangers are about the internet. So one thing I also did was install software on the phone that sort of tracks all applications, all activities that it does on a phone. Before he installs a game or an app, it'll send me a notification and say, hey, there's this app, your son's trying to install, its age rating is X age, and there's a description, and I can decide whether I want to approve or disapprove it. So at a young age already, we got to teach people what cybersecurity is. And that's an example, obviously, that, involves my son. However, when you start breaking down the term cybersecurity, you got to start with the cyber component. Cyber refers to technology and computers or computing. Anything that involves that, you need to obviously secure it, hence cybersecurity.
And when we look at cybersecurity, how did it sort of become an integral part of every component? Is it the fact that these hackers were then attacking everything and changing it for the bad and everybody needed it? Or is it that the internet was designed to have a cybersecurity component in it?
So the way the internet sort of evolved, it wasn't initially intended for what we know the internet is today, right? It started off in the days of the military, and it was used sort of in a private, capacity. And it sort of evolved, and people started seeing that there's use cases you can actually use this for. And obviously, e-commerce back in the 90s, that sort of thing. So the boom started, right? And it has evolved so much that it's gone all the way to what we can do with AI now. I mean, it's become ubiquitous with the way we live. You can't do anything without the internet today. So when it came about, it sort of evolved. It was an evolution. Security was not at the core of it. And we see that with a lot of applications that are available today, right? They're normally not built with security in place. It's only when somebody comes along, makes it do something that it wasn't intended to, the hacker term we touched on earlier on, that people kind of go, actually, we need to stop this behavior, right? We can't just have a banking app and we haven't thought about security, because there's all these people who are going to want to do malicious stuff, want to take advantage of it. So the hackers come in, or bad actors, they'll come and take advantage. So that's where security came in. So it wasn't initially intended to be like that, but it was an evolution.
That's interesting. So essentially, the hackers created the business case for cybersecurity. Because if we didn't have hackers, we wouldn't have it. But I mean, you've had over a decade experience in ICT, and I'm sure it's been so interesting because 10 years back and where ICT is today has evolved. When you started, what was ICT?
Sure.
And when was this?
When I started, so I can go back to my high school days, right? When I was in high school, I guess one of the most popular operating systems at the time was probably Windows. You could say Windows 98. And then I started high school, and we had the old PC boxes, the white desktops. So that's the era.
The huge screen.
Yes.
Heavy.
Yeah, that's the era obviously that I got well acquainted with computers, right? So that's what it was. And the internet was still something that people were still becoming familiar with, especially also in South Africa as well. So that was ICT for us. Like, you get on the internet and you use Google and it does all these interesting things for you, because we used to have libraries where you need to go and take out your Britannica encyclopedia to do research. But now there is this computer that has all this information and more, and latest information than what the encyclopedia would have, right? Because there's like cut off date and you have to keep buying them. So that was probably the biggest use case for me at the time. So, and then obviously the social media came in, and the YouTubes and all that. So yeah.
And I mean, seeing this evolution happen, how did you sort of keep up to date with all of it? Because I think, unlike many other industries where things change quite slowly, in cyber, I'm sure new hackers come up, better hackers come up, so you continually have to keep changing stuff. In your journey, what were some of the changes that happened?
Yeah, there's been a lot of them. Hey, like it's so fascinating when you look at that. The fourth industrial revolution graph, right? And it shows you the various innovation waves, and you sort of see that the earlier waves, it's like 60 years, 50 years, and it's become smaller. And the current wave and the one they predict that is coming, it's gonna be in a much shorter space. So that means so much change is gonna happen in a short space of time, and obviously, in the cyberspace, it's got to keep up, right? I've seen things such as, we can talk something that's relevant today, remote work. A lot of people have changed the way they work thanks to the pandemic. And before, where you used to have an office where everyone needs to go work in the office, and your computer was obviously located in the office, all you had to do was protect the office, And we had laptops come along now. So everybody has laptops, and now you can take the device out of the laptop, and now remote workforce is, in full swing, which means you no longer have a perimeter to protect. That's a big analogy that we use in cyber. This sort of a castle and moat, where the castles back in the day used to be, in a space where they build out sort of like a water, like a DMZ of sort.
Yeah,
there's one entrance. Yes. And just one way in and out, right?
Wow, so is that how they build cyber systems? It's like a castle. There's one way in.
100%.
Okay.
So that's the architecture that you could actually use. That said, okay, look, you gotta have one way in and out, and that's where things like firewalls have come in, where they actually determine who comes in and out. They either deny or permit.
So a firewall is like that water around the castle. Is that what a firewall is?
Yes. So it allows you access to a specific point. So you need to know whether through an IP address, or you need to know, or the URL which you type in to go to www.whatever bank you go. So that has to go through a firewall for you to have access to it.
Yeah. And what do the hackers do? The hackers then try and build firewalls into the castle?
So normally the hackers try to find out what vulnerabilities exist.
Or within the main firewall?
Within whatever software that is normally either behind the firewall, or sometimes even on the firewall itself, right? So one of the things they do, they actually try to scan the internet, first of all, for these vulnerabilities, because all software that is created is not inherently secure. The guys that code, the key thing for them is delivering software that works.
Oh, this is profound. All software that is created is not inherently secure.
No.
The guys they're building, you say to them, I want an app that's going to do 1, 2, 3, and that's what they're focusing on, not the securing part.
Absolutely. Like when you say to someone, build me a website, they're just going to build your website. It looks good. Security is not even top of mind at the moment, right? Whether it's a website, whether it's an application. So, and in that's where vulnerabilities are sort of introduced in the way the software or the application actually works. So there's different types of vulnerabilities that can actually be exploited. So that's what hackers are essentially looking for.
Oh.
So they have the solutions that scan the landscape and say, okay, cool, here there's a hole, and let me exploit it. That's why updates are very important, right? Updates on your phone, updates on your laptop, any software, you need to constantly update it. The reason you update it is not just so you can get new features. That's part of it. But it's because they find out what these vulnerabilities are that are being exploited by the bad guys, and the manufacturer sort of obviously closes those gaps. So that's what happens.
Wow, that's interesting. Now I know why I always need to click on my updates. But looking at that, I mean, you've got some experience in open group architect framework.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked at that, I thought, okay, this is interesting. What does this actually mean? Yeah, what is that?
So that's in the realm of enterprise architecture. So that was essentially saying you cannot look at technology in isolation, right? When you look at organization, there are a lot of factors that actually guide the use cases. You need to understand the business model. You need to understand specific risks that apply to the actual business, right? Because a lot of people just come in and just want to buy, technology, and like, no. Why is the technology there? It's there to provide a function, right? And you need to understand the supporting infrastructure around it. The people, the processes, the technology, you need to understand all those legs of it. So that's what essentially that says. That says, look, it's a whole system. When you think of it in terms of systems thinking, none of it is isolated. It's all connected to a bigger, sort of a system. That's essentially what it touches on.
So a system security professional, what would that be? Because I'm trying to also get into understanding in the cybersecurity world, what do we call, like how in medicine there'll be like a junior doctor, there'll be a specialist, and then there'll be the nurse, and then how does that apply in cybersecurity? Is it that there are those sort of things?
Yes, they are. So I think that you're probably referring to the CISP certification. So that's one of the, you could say, most popular certifications in cybersecurity. It's one of the most sought after ones, because for you to have that, you need to have X amount of experience in the industry, and there are multiple domains that you need to be well versed in. So it's not just you need to understand how networking works. You need to understand how coding works. You need to understand there's a legal component. You need to understand there's a business component. So it touches on all of those. So and that's what you get tested on. So there are many roles that one can obviously occupy when you have something like that, right? So in cyber, you can be an engineer, you can be an analyst, you can be an architect. When you look at roles, there are technical and non-technical roles in cybersecurity. So that's why when you look at people trying to get into the industry, there's enough roles for people to actually come in and, use their skills and talents in. You don't have to be technical. You don't have to know how to code. But we can touch on it a little bit later, but you gotta be hungry to learn, because it's not an easy industry to get into. But yeah.
I mean, for somebody who's watching, a young person watching, saying, I want to get into cyber, and they don't really have a path, what path would you advise them to take? Where do they begin? What sort of journey are they supposed to be following?
So when you get into cybersecurity, it's one industry. Essentially, the core of cybersecurity, one of the cores that I actually think of is you're trying to build a mental model for solving problems, right? If you're going to be successful in the industry, you got to be able to troubleshoot. And that's what you're going to be faced with. You're going to have problems thrown, and you got to be able to solve them, and you got to be able to think out of the box. You must be resourceful, right, in terms of how you solve these problems. So if you're willing to do that, then you will be successful in the industry, right? So it's not an industry where you just come in, you go do your diploma or do your degree, and you think my education is done. Oh no, that's not how it works here. Continuous education and learning, that needs to be your life now, right? Because we spoke about how vulnerabilities change so fast. There's so many changes in the industry that you need to keep up with them. So you gotta be willing to continuously learn. You must be resourceful. You must be able to teach yourself stuff and be self-sufficient in that space, right? And luckily, there's a lot of free resources that you can actually learn from today. You get on the internet, you get on YouTube, whatever, there are free resources. In this day and age, I mean, the ability to get together knowledge is no longer a barrier. Knowledge is no longer a barrier. I mean, these days you can get access to AI for free, and then it can teach you much better than any of the other previous ways that you could have learned. So you must be hungry to teach yourself a lot of those concepts, and you must be willing to get your hands dirty. I mean, if you're going to get into an industry, one of the things that you'll see as an obstacle is people want experience and they want qualifications, right? And you can come in and do a whole bunch of certifications and be qualified, but then it's like now the experience component, where does it come in, right? And if you don't go through the traditional path of getting an internship, and then they can give you that sort of, work experience and education component, you might find yourself in a space where you need to teach yourself a lot of this stuff. You might have to find yourself learning how to build labs on your computer. So there are softwares that you can actually use to build labs, and you can simulate systems that a lot of these organizations use and that can teach you.
What are labs?
Labs essentially, it's a visualization of a physical computer, right? So one of the most popular ways is a hypervisor, and then you actually use it to sort of simulate a number of computers, like a server, a Windows, a Linux machine. So you can have those on your laptop, on your desktop. You can simulate that, right? And you can simulate the communication between that. And you can build firewalls in that space. You can build routing capabilities in that. And you can also do sort of, if you want, let's say in a security context, you can hack between those systems in a safe environment. So you can do that without obviously destroying and messing up other people's environment, because in these days, you do that and you get caught, you could do up to 15 years. So just
putting it out there.
Putting it out there, right? Look, at this day and age, there's a lot of free stuff that you can use out there. The software is available for free. Even some of the most popular,
What's that software called? Labs.
So there's various types you can. So if you go virtualization software,
okay,
search for open source virtualization software, and you'll get sort of the top hits will tell you what it is, and you can just install that and
begin.
Begin.
What a world we live in, where people can start doing these things straight from there.
Yeah. I mean, and you can sort of fight that. Oh, I don't have experience, and you don't just have theory, because the reality is theory can only get you so far. So you need to do that stuff and put that in your CV. Put it as a micro credential, right? And we can touch on micro credential in a bit, but as a learning thing that you actually did. Say, look, I've learned this. I've got this skill. Put it in there.
Wow. I mean, you've had some experience in the banking sector, and obviously now you've now left there. But let's talk about that in the banking sector. Because I believe the banking sector is probably the holy grail of cybersecurity, because isn't it that money is the most important thing that should be protected? Let's talk about that. What were you doing in the banking sector?
So I was an information security specialist there. And that's what we did. So we just had to protect the bank. And you're absolutely right. The security there needs to be, on point, because trust is very key. Trust is at the core of it. I mean, if something happens and you lose trust in the bank, that's it. Their business is done, right? So our banks really do invest a lot in security, and for good reason, right? So we put in the systems that obviously sort of detect hackers and detect whenever there's vulnerabilities in the software, that sort of things. And they've got multiple teams in there, right? It's not just a small mom and pop shop. There are various teams that do a lot of things in the security space. So
can you give us a bit more about that when you were working in the bank? Just a glimpse as to what it looks like, because I think everybody understands what accountants do, everybody understands what doctors do, because it's all so physical.
Yeah,
we can sort of see it, the doctor operated on this person, and it makes sense. But one would think, okay, as a cybersecurity specialist in a bank, what do those people do on a daily basis? You get to work, and what happens?
So it depends on your role, right? It depends on your role. So I can give you an example. Yeah. So I can give an example, for instance, banking app. So a banking app is one that we're all familiar with, right? Because we all have it, and that's how you bank with. So you could have a team that comes in, and their job is to ensure that that app is secure. You deploy solutions to ensure that new functionalities such as facial recognition are in the app. So it's one of the service providers that we actually work with, where they're behind the solution for you. When you pick up your phone and show your face, it recognizes who you are. And that's actually quite key and important, because it's a homegrown solution, which is very key, right? And it's important because, African problems need African solutions at the end of the day. And we could have used a solution that is sold elsewhere. But one thing that we've seen, not all solutions are created equally. Some solutions don't do so well in darker skin tones, African people, right? And you need a solution that you can even connect it to, like, say, our Home Affairs, that makes it even more accurate, because this day and age, AI could be used to bypass a lot of those.
Mm.
So you need a solution that actually can actually, be a step ahead.
Oh, I guess that's why my banking app, when setting it up, it says blink 3 times, and I'm blinking.
Yeah, so that's called a liveliness test, right? To ensure that, somebody's not just there, putting a picture or, trying to use some other trick. Interesting enough that actually we mentioned that aspect. Just last week, one of the leading cybersecurity organizations was sort of, you wouldn't say maybe successfully infiltrated. So there was a person allegedly from North Korea who applied for a job there, right? They applied for a job. They had 4 video interviews and all the checks checked out fine. HR did all the checks because the person stole obviously an identity for somebody from the US that would qualify, and they took an image and they doctored it using AI. It's a stock photo, so it's actually available. So they doctored it using AI, and
Sorry,
they made
I just want to stop you. Doctored means they turned the image into a video. Is that
so? They took an image. It's of a guy, and then they made into an Asian person, right?
okay?
So they changed the image. So
okay,
yeah.
cool. That's doctored.
So
okay.
yeah. So yes, they manipulated the image, and they essentially passed all the checks, and they were given the job.
Sure.
And the company sends the email, sends the laptop. Say, look, well done. Welcome to the team. They sent the laptop.
Yeah.
And as soon as the person got the laptop, they started installing malicious software in there. Luckily, the security of that organization was actually, up to par, and they detected that and obviously started investigating. I believe right now it's still being investigated by the FBI and that sort of thing. So that just shows you how far those things have come.
Sure. And I mean, if they had successfully done that, let us say that person had successfully gotten the machine, got the software there, what could that mean for that cybersecurity company? What could have been the damage?
Yeah, so it would have been bad, hey? Because obviously that means, imagine you're a cybersecurity organization and you've been breached. It's back to trust again, right? So now the people who you provide services to, they've lost trust in you. Now they're going to say, look, you didn't do everything you could to protect us, to protect yourself. How can we trust, to do business with you? So, yeah, so it really is bad. I mean, trust is such a key thing, right? I mean, just again, last week, right? I'm sure you heard about the big outage that happened.
Yes, yeah. I heard planes been flying. Yeah.
I think they just touched on how digital our lives have become, right? How we're reliant on the digital aspect of things. And that wasn't even a security incident. It just involved the company that provides security. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I think it's so fascinating to realize that cybersecurity, you never really see their impact up until things go wrong. Because that's when you're like, whoa, the whole world out there that's making sure that everything is able to function. I think that's quite profound. But going back, after leaving the bank, I mean, what was your next step after that? After leaving that job, where did you move to?
So I left the bank and I went to work for a service provider, CyberOne Solutions. That's where I currently am. And for me, it was a much needed move because that's where my growth came from. I needed to grow, and I was like, that's gonna be my next step, and that's what happened. So, and I started moving obviously along the ranks. Went from obviously being a security engineer to information security specialist, to an architect, head of architect, and then technical director. So it was very key for me to get out of that comfort zone so that I could grow. A lot of the times people get stuck in that comfort zone where, this is what I've been doing, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna stay in that space. But I'm one of those persons that actually realize that growth comes on the edge of your comfort level.
Wow, that's profound. Do you mind breaking down those roles for us that you've just explained to say this was touching on this was touching on this, so that we understand what that transition means?
Yeah.
So when you got there, you started on?
So security engineer, information security specialist, essentially your role is to implement a lot of the solutions, right? whether you're protecting an endpoint, cloud, firewalls, email security, all of that, you actually implement the solutions, and you've got to be able to make it work, and you got to be able to determine when it's not working well and when it's under attack, and that sort of thing. So that's the engineering component, making things work, right?
And when you say making things work, do you mean hacking it and closing that loophole for the hacker, or is it making the internal components work?
So that's making the internal components work. The analysts, on the other hand, they probably focus more on the security side of things. So they sort of chase the bad actors, when one gets detected, and then, you have to sort of find out what happened. So there's people who install the solutions, you install the software, make it work, and then it starts monitoring the environment, right? And then someone tries something, and you got to have these alerts that fire off. And then there's going to be a team of people that sort of are always watching. Have you seen a room with all those big screens, and then people are working 24/7?
Mm-hmm.
So that's called a SOC, a Security Operations Center, right? So those guys have got to be sharp, right? If your solutions pick that up, they got to start the investigation to be able to piece the pieces together, put the pieces together to be able to say, okay, no, this is bad, or this is a false positive, we can ignore it. So those are the various roles that actually, take place. And you also have what's called blue team and red team. So in a space like a bank, they would have those where you've got the blue team, which are essentially the guys who protect the system, and the red team, the guys who try to hack and break the system, right? Because you don't want to wait until the bad actors actually come in for you to find out that you've got a hole.
Okay, that's very interesting.
So you have your own internal teams that sort of battle.
Yeah, that must be very interesting.
Yeah, they battle. Some guys like...
Who's winning?
Yeah. You've been hired by the bank to break into the system. That's your job, red team.
Oh.
And then there's a guy, you've been hired to protect the system. So there's all those various roles that actually, take place in there. So that is just digressing a bit there.
Yeah.
So back to my...
digressing, I have heard of a point where somebody said, and it was an article, said, if you can hack the system, the bank will pay you because you're so good to close that loophole. I've heard of stuff like that.
Yes. So that's called bounty hunting, right? So what happens is in the black market or the dark web, where a lot of these activities sort of take place.
I have to talk about the dark web, but okay, yeah.
So
okay,
we'll get into the
dark web. We'll get there. Let's go back.
So there's this market where all these illegal goods are being sold and all these illegal activities take place, right? And one of the things that gets sold there are what's called 0 days, right? So when you have a software that you spoke about and it's got a vulnerability, there is a hole that can be exploited, right? There hasn't been a patch that's been created yet. That's why it's called a 0 day, because maybe no one knew about it before then, right? So there's a market where they sell those, because when they sell that, the reason that gets sold is because bad actors can take that 0 day to break into your environment, and none of your existing security controls will pick it up because there are no updates for it. The reason you have sort of antivirus and intrusion prevention systems, they all work on signatures and updates, right? They pick up certain patterns and try to stop the attacks. So if you have a 0 day, it means there are no signatures and updates for it, for it to be patched. That's why that's important.
So the bank would pay somebody to say, oh, you've caught a 0 day for us. Here's a bounty, or thank you for helping us.
100%. So It's like, okay, so now we'll have this program where you try and see if you can find any bugs in our system or any vulnerabilities. Then we pay you, because then it's like, okay, it's an official program where you actually trying to find the bugs to report them so they can close them.
The red team. Okay, back to the red team. Yeah. Let's go back to the roles where you were explaining.
Yes.
The red team.
So I moved from engineering space and to architecture. Architecture, like a normal architect, your role is to actually design the solutions now, right? So you need to understand all the various parts and domains that are involved in there, whether it's endpoint, identity, data security, cloud security, So there's a whole bunch of them, right? And once you understand how they all fit together, you can design the solution. That's where you're an architect now. So, and then obviously from there, the head of the architecture team, and then obviously the technical director role.
Well, and what is the technical director role?
So the technical director role, that's now where you learn your business skills, right? It's a little less technical, because you've got to be able to now talk to customers and build use cases, assist the sales team in terms of how you sell your solutions, speak to the businesses to actually understand what their problems actually are. Because sometimes your solutions they're not found in a product. And then you got to think out of the box in terms of, okay, how do we actually secure businesses, and how do we do it in a way that it doesn't disrupt their normal operations, right? Because in the corporate world, you have this battle between the guys who do infrastructure and the guys who do security, right? The guys who do infrastructure, their role is to make sure everything works. Security is there to make sure that things are secure. So you can imagine the clash between the two, because the security guys are normally seen as the guys who come and shut things down.
Yeah.
That's essentially how security, even in the cyberspace, is seen as, right?
So there may be an easier way to enter, but the security guard is saying, sorry, use this gate to enter. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's that friction. So your job is essentially to come in and say, okay, how do we actually help the business achieve its goals without causing friction?
I love that. I think you've broken it down and it makes great sense for us. I want to go back to something you said. You spoke about the facial recognition and you said it's an inbound solution. What did you mean? Did you mean it's a solution you got in South Africa?
Yes. So the specific vendor that we actually deal with, yes, it actually was created here in South Africa.
And that brings me to my question to say, is cybersecurity a real thing in South Africa? Because I think a lot of us, see the internet and we watch series and movies from overseas that depict cybersecurity, and we automatically think, okay, because I haven't watched it on Movango or Generations, it doesn't exist in South Africa. Does it exist? Is it a real market? What are some of the numbers? Take us through.
Sure. Short answer, yes. It is a real thing. So if you read a lot of the reports, they'll tell you on the continent, we are probably one of the biggest victims of cybersecurity, mainly because we got the infrastructure. More people have access to the internet. There are a lot more smart devices, so we are a target, right? So, and there are actually some organizations locally that are doing great in the cybersecurity space. We actually got some very good exports, organizations that are born in the country and they become international sensations. That's how big it is, right? So cybersecurity is a real thing. I mean, there's also, I'm starting to see people trying to incorporate cybersecurity in early education as well, right? University levels, which is really key. And you start seeing a lot of hackathons come up, right? Hackathons essentially, they put a bunch of youngsters in a room and you're there to solve problems, right? And that actually breeds a lot of skills in there. You get to see a lot of skills come up from those ranks because it's saying you've got a limited time, this is the problem, fix the problem, and then at the end of the day, you actually come and present what your thinking process was. How did you approach fixing this problem? So hackathons are quite popular, and we definitely need a lot more of them, right? From high school age, varsity, and so forth. We need to do a lot more of those because that's how you unearth the true raw talent. Because when you look at cybersecurity, it's all about a certain type of persona that becomes a success there. The person who's always curious. The person who wants to know how things work. The person who tinkers. The person who innovates. And I think
You're describing me here. So I have been in cybersecurity.
you're a kill. I mean, you're a kill. I mean, you're already in the technology space. So
Wow.
those are actually the qualities that you're actually trying to unearth using something like a hackathon.
Wow. And I mean, you're so right to say there should be more of these because we just don't have this. And I think that's the reason why we're not seeing many people get involved in it. I know there's the big conversation about, Black kids need to get involved more in tech. And, there's always that debate of saying, oh, but how are they going to get involved? They're not inquisitive enough. They listen to Amapiano. They're not learning. The youth are,
Yeah.
And there's also that conversation of saying, oh, but the other kids, the Asian kids and kids from Europe are so much further in terms of tech and everything.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see a Black professional like yourself who's in cybersecurity. But what have you experienced in the industry? Is it true? Are there no Black people in the industry, or is it not true? What are some of your experiences?
Not true. There are lots of Black professionals that have done great things. I mean, I know people personally who have even gone overseas, a lot of the skills, you get to a point where you're like, okay, cool, I need to go overseas now because I'm sought after, the companies that pay in pounds or dollars or whatever it is. So yes, there's been a lot of, people that have climbed up the ranks. So I think one thing in cybersecurity that we do need to see is more women. We definitely need to see a lot more women. And I think that's what we need to focus on.
That's profound. That's very profound.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at it, right, let's break down the STEM field, right? There are many branches that you can go into it, but how many women end up doing the hardcore technical stuff, right? And we see it also in the working environment where the people who are opening up the laptops and carrying the servers and sort of things, it's mostly the gents, right? And normally that sort of changes the path that you normally take, because then you start finding a lot more women start going through sort of a governance path, right? And they can become cybersecurity auditors, they do governance and that sort of thing. And then the gents normally take the technical path, right? They become the engineers. So that's the mold that we actually need to break.
Oh, that's profound. I mean, as Cyber One, you guys have done very well. You're specialists that operate in South Africa, East and West Africa, Middle East, Europe. What has been some of your best markets? And I mean, seeing that you've done Europe, you've done Middle East, what are some of your best markets, and how are those markets going?
So Africa for us is actually our home. So South Africa definitely, we have certain sort of sectors and industries that we're much stronger in, because it's a big industry, right? Some people are better at retail, some people are strong in the mining, some people in the financial space. So we've done very well a lot of the times in the financial space. Public and private sector, we've done quite a bit of government stuff as well there. And in other African countries, they starting to see, a number of attacks in countries such as Kenya as well, that at some stage was snowed under with attacks and denial of service attacks. So we've got a presence there as well. So we've seen quite a lot of growth there.
Now that you mentioned Kenya, I mean, I remember there was a time where the hackers would say, government, we're not going to allow you to access your system unless you pay a ransom. Send this money to Bitcoin or whatever the case is. What is that? Have you guys been seeing that? Is that a thing?
Absolutely. So that's a big thing. Ransomware has been around for a while, right? And essentially the way it works, it's like a normal ransom where someone gets kidnapped and it says, okay, you need to give us money and then we'll release the person. Same thing. So this time it's just technology where somebody actually gets into your systems, either because they tricked you into clicking a link on an email, because that's the biggest way that a lot of companies get hacked. It's through phishing, where someone essentially sends you an email and they get you to click a link, and that link sort of installs malicious software in your system, right? So that happens, and once they do that, they can encrypt your data, which means it's not readable because they've got the key that can decrypt it, right? So they encrypt all your data. You can't read, you can't access your systems. And they say to you, okay, For you to have access to your systems, you need to pay us X Bitcoin. They use cryptocurrency because it's difficult to trace, right? And a lot of companies, unfortunately, have been caught with that. And there's a lot of programs that we currently working on where we're trying to educate business leaders and people about actually the impact of that and the sort of responsibility regarding that, because there's a lot to it. Because imagine now your stuff has been encrypted, you have no access to it. You essentially have to now negotiate with a criminal at the end of the day. And when do you involve the cops?
The cops even, okay.
You know what I'm saying? So there's that component. And how do you access Bitcoin? Now you're like, I must buy this Bitcoin thing. I've never,
Have you found people that have paid? And when they do pay, do these ransom guys actually...
Yes, there are people that have paid, because at the end of the day, I know it's easy to judge and say, you don't pay, but you kind of go, if I don't pay, my business is done for. Right? If you don't have access to
you lose so much every day.
Your business is, some people like that, you could end up shutting down your business. So you kind of go, actually, I'd rather pay this ransom and trying to see if I can get my data back. So unfortunately, some people pay and don't get data back.
Oh, sure.
Some people pay and they get data back. It sounds crazy, but it's almost like you want to be attacked and robbed by the true professionals, because they're the ones who normally give you your data back because of reputation, right? They want to keep a reputation, because it's a reputation in the market that if these guys hack you, because there's all sorts of groups. They're like, there's a whole...
Wait. So you're saying that there are groups of hackers that have a good reputation, like these guys are ethical. Sounds like thieves that are like, okay, these thieves are professionals, but okay.
Essentially, for lack of a better word, yes. So they're there where these guys, okay, they keep a good reputation. They'll break into your system. You pay, you'll get your data. What also is happening now, there's a lot of copycats that actually come into the market because it's become so easy now. It is easy for you to get onto the market, whether it's a dark web, whatever, and you can buy these sort of ransomware as a service, sort of solutions where you can set up your own enterprise and it's like a company these days, the whole business of cybercrime. It's like setting up a company, right? And there's people who set up programs and they specialize in there's some people who specialize in breaking into organizations, and then they sell that access to other people who then take it and do something else with it.
I see. So the whole value chain. But I mean, okay, so maybe let's go into dark web, because my follow-up question was going to be, where does this world exist? Because for the average person out there, they log on to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. They've never seen a hacker posting, hey guys, just finished hacking. But they always see accountants, doctors, etc. So I think the cyber world is a world on its own, and I'm sure that there's where does this world exist? Where do you soak this information?
So when you think of the internet, and I'm going to get the percentages wrong because I don't have them off the top of my head, but just for illustration, the internet that you and I know, that you get on your browser and you go to YouTube, your social media and whatever, that's accessible to you, it's about 10%. Like I said, the numbers are probably going to be wrong, but just to prove the point. The dark web probably makes up 70% of that. That's the part where it's not accessible to you and I. For you to be able to access that, you need to have special software that allows you to actually enter the dark web. And then everything happens there, from people selling arms to drugs to that sort of thing.
I heard rhino horns. Somebody was explaining to me, because when I asked them, I said, in South Africa and in Africa, we've got the syndicates that are poaching rhinos, and I said to them, is there a WhatsApp group? Where do these people sell these rhinos, And somebody said, no, on the dark web, literally, there's places where people sell them. So one would understand it as sort of a WhatsApp group for criminals, but it's available on a different...
Yes, absolutely. 100%, that's that. And obviously now they've moved on to platforms like Telegram, right? So, to make it more accessible. So,
Sure. So what does that mean? Is the dark web available on Telegram?
So certain components of them are. So remember, one of the things about Telegram is that they introduced a lot of sort of security measures into their messaging app, and it's got some features that make it easier for people to just create this community and share all sorts of information as well.
Let's see. Yeah. So I've seen that. Yeah. And I mean, why is it that WhatsApp, for example, that doesn't happen, but on Telegram it happens? What's the difference?
Well, nobody say it doesn't happen on WhatsApp.
Okay.
But I think the one thing that you do see, like they favor Telegram because of probably a lot of the functionalities and things that you can do.
And you don't need a number. You don't need to verify a number on Telegram.
Things like that, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. So, yeah.
And I mean, from your side, I've always wondered, about the dark web, and I've never really gotten into the dark web, but I've seen somebody show me, I think it was a Tor browser or something.
Mm-hmm. That's one of these, yeah.
Yeah, and I asked them the question to say, so when you're in the dark web, does it take away your ethnicity, your country, or is it that I'm in the dark web in South Africa, I'm in the dark web or is it just the dark web?
So it's just the dark web. So they have these nodes. Not to get too technical, like Tor.
I'd want to know what nodes are because I've heard something.
So it's like, think of them as portals, right?
So nodes of portals.
You use Tor. You mentioned Tor. That's one.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Cool.
Tor it's essentially short for the Onion. It's like the Onion browser, where you actually log into it, and you need to know sort of the address of where you're going to, or what you're looking for in the dark web, and it can actually take you there. So, yeah, I mean, there's many ways to get in there. Is it anonymous? Yes, it is anonymous. It is hard to check a person. It depends on what you do in there. You piss off people enough, like some people like the FBI after you, yeah, they might find ways to uncover who you are. But you can become anonymous to a certain extent.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because I've heard that the FBI is on the dark web to try and catch people. So policing institutions,
they have to be. So a number of the vendors that we essentially deal with, they have a presence there, right? Because a lot of the times, if you get hacked, we spoke about ransomware, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Where they'll deny access to your own data and environment, and then they'll also want to sell your data to somebody else.
I see. So that you could. Oh, so it's better for you to buy your own data.
You know what I'm saying? So they could sell it, or they could even sell access further on to other parties. So all of that happens, obviously, on the dark web.
Yeah.
And it's essentially it's a marketplace. It's essentially a marketplace where all these things take place. And
Sure.
Yeah, if we could go on all day about it.
Yeah, I think I watched an episode. It was one of these series that I think it's called, is it Power, or is it? It's one of these series that talk about the US and the presidents of the US and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, I think it was Afghanistan and the US.
Mm-hmm.
I think Afghanistan had gotten some information about rockets from the US and selling it on the dark web, and the US bought that from the dark web.
Yeah.
And there was a moment in there where the person said, should we spend a lot of money to buy back the information? And the guy said, it doesn't matter about the price. The data is more important than the money. And I remember that line from the movie to say, this is interesting, because you hear people now say data's the new oil, and, all these rhetorics running. And it brings me to the point to say, from how companies are spending, are we now seeing that data is so vital that companies are saying, you know what, even if we have to spend so much of our budget on it, we must, because that's what it is?
Absolutely. So data has become so critical. That's why we're starting to see the rise of data analysts that have actually, are taking up space, because organizations are kind of going, how do we monetize our current customer base? How do we, monetize our ecosystem? And they say a lot of insights is in the data. So that's why you need to protect the data, because a lot of people want to mine it and actually can extract a lot of insights from it. And you can actually create new business models. That's why data is so important. And I think back to your point about the dark web is the reason you need people like law enforcement and the good guys in there is so, one, they can help uncover that. And some of them, they can actually take down stuff that if you have data stolen and it's being sold, that they can take it down. because obviously they work with the likes of Interpol, and there's sort of this joint activity where they can actually take down, especially the big actors, right? They can do that. That's essentially one of the ways that.
Oh, that's very interesting. I think I want to move into a question about banking, because there's this rhetoric in Africa. And just doing my research on this topic, I realized that there are even terms that are now known, and one of the terms in Nigeria is the Yahoo boy. And basically that term means you go into a room with 10 young men in that room, and they've got a small little window just to breathe, and it's all dark, and all of them are on laptops.
Yeah.
And, they say they're the Yahoo boys. They're trying to, the one aspect of it is that they find vulnerable pictures of people on the internet, then they look for ransom from them, they're hacking banking systems, etc. And I often ask myself to say, what is this? And is this a real thing? Is it happening? I think in South Africa, it's not a known thing, or I haven't heard about it in South Africa. But surely in West African countries, we're hearing more about it. What is that, and what is happening there?
So those are essentially scammers, right? They scam people, and there's a lot of these scams that go around, right? You get scams, you get the romantic scams, where they set up fake profiles. And they obviously chat to people, and you have this connection with somebody, and next thing you've been asked for money, and then there are people who've transferred lots of money to these scammers. And the most famous one, obviously, is the email you get that says, Prince so-and-so has left you X millions.
In that email, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're all rich.
Life.
Yeah, we're all rich. So that's where a lot of those scammers obviously originate. And yes, it's unfortunate that they, if you look at a lot of the reports and investigation, they do come from a certain region or countries. That's why they sort of get a bad reputation, but they essentially from everywhere.
So that isn't hacking. That's just more conversational things that they say to try and get information from you. It's not that they've hacked your information.
So it's hacking, but it's hacking the human being, right? The term for it is called social engineering, right? And yes, it's one of the domains and pillars of security where you're basically trying to manipulate human beings, right? That's why a lot of the scams work, because we're emotional beings. Someone sends you an email and saying, hey, your SARS refund is due, and then you're like, ooh, you click, boom, they've got you, right? You get an SMS that says, you've got a parcel that's coming from wherever. You need to click here to accept the parcel and whatever, otherwise it's going to be sent back, and you're like, ooh, I don't want to lose my parcel. That type of thing. So it's breaking into the human psyche, and hacking the human being. I mean, one of the things that gets done also with the pen testers, they'll go into an organization and try to see if they can actually smooth talk their way into it.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a thing where you go in there, you do your homework, you go in there and you're like, no, actually I've got an appointment in Paul. Yeah, no, I didn't speak to you. And then, if you don't train your people, they will fall for a lot of these. So, yeah, so that's the part of the human hacking that actually gets exploited a lot.
And I think that's probably why, in banks, when you go there, they're so tight on security. Who are you here to see? Do you have a laptop? Let's write down all the details of the laptop. Okay, to make sure that doesn't happen. I mean, I've heard all sorts of things. I heard somebody inform me that when you are a certain level of management in a bank, even who you date, they sort of want to know who that person is in case they ever get a moment with your work laptop and this, that, and the other. And I thought, okay, that's very interesting. So the aspect of security goes even beyond just the individual being at work. It's all about whatever you touch that has access to your work system. That's important to protect.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, if you're a high-risk person, your risk profile sort of goes up, right? And the reality is, you look at all these things and you're thinking, espionage is only in movies, right? But no, like right now, somebody could send a beautiful woman to befriend you, knowing very well that you've got access to certain information, and you're thinking, this person loves me, whilst their job is just to get onto your laptop, stick in a USB, it does all the work, and, job is done. So,
I think the world is changing so much in that in the past we used to talk like this about money. To say somebody will come in and they'll open your safe or your wallet and they'll take your money. But now it's more about the digital access there. But looking at the industry and the way that it's changing, what are the key things that you've noticed? I mean, for young people out there that are watching and saying, look, we love what Edison is saying. We love what he's talking about. How should they prepare themselves or get themselves better prepared to get involved in cybersecurity? Looking at, the young people that are unemployed, there's a lot of young people that are saying, look, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to do this, but I don't know the know-how, or how should yes, I'll start learning, but what do I do to sort of better prepare myself for this world? What would be your advice for them?
So, a number of them, sometimes they wait to get a degree and then go through a traditional path of, I've got a degree, I get an internship, and I get an opportunity to work. But the reality is, this day and age, the skills are the most important thing. Qualifications are very key, but your abilities sort of stand out. And we touched on earlier on briefly about micro-credentials, right? It's not formal education, but things that you learn, right? You've done a short 30-minute course on something on YouTube. You've done whatever course, wherever. All those are micro-credentials that you can use, put together, put it sort of as a portfolio of evidence to show to somebody, to say, look, this is what I've done. This is the initiative that I have taken to teach myself about the industry. Can I get an opportunity to shadow somebody? Can I get an opportunity to get on your graduate or your internship program? So for me, I would be more, inclined to hire somebody like that, than people like, okay, so you've just showed us that you could sit and, for 3 years and, listen to a lecture and pass some exams. Great. But what does it say about your abilities, right? But if you see that somebody has taught themselves certain things, those are the type of candidates you want. Because the reality, a lot of the hackers, are normally self-taught. The hackers don't go to universities and learn how to hack.
Yeah, because I don't think a lecturer would be teaching you how to speak.
So it's normally youngsters that have taught themselves these things. They've been curious. They're sitting in their mother's basement. There's the joke about sitting in your mom's basement with a hoodie. And a lot of them that have actually been on the limelight has been youngsters who've done some interesting things and hacked organizations that people thought unhackable, right? It's always been the hungry youngsters. So demonstrate that, and that's where the opportunities are going to come for you.
While preparing for this interview, one of the things that a lot of people want to know out there is the work-life balance. And in industries that are demanding, like cyber, investment banking, lots of these industries, people sort of said, you struggle to get a work-life balance because it's so demanding. How have you managed that? Is it true that it's very difficult in these industries?
Absolutely. It's a tough, demanding industry. Like I mentioned, there's so much happening each week. The industry looks different this year than it did last year. So whatever level you're at, you always constantly need to be learning, right? So one of the things, obviously, I like going to gym, I like hiking, and I recently got married. That has brought a nice level of, I've been a focused person, but that brought another level of focus for me. And it actually, has helped with my work-life balance. Because my wife would be like, we're going on a short left. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put down the laptop. Let's do that, right? So it's going to be difficult. So you got to find things that will add to that balance. But it's also weird because the people who sort of become a success are those people who are sort of obsessed.
They don't have the balance.
They're obsessed. Yeah, it's like there's no balance. And those are the people that that also make it out. But also, you're also at the risk of burnout. One of the things in our industry that's quite prevalent is burnout, right? Even at the top level, at the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer level, burnout is a real thing. So that's why they say the lifespan or or a CISO is very short, right? Because in a lot of organizations, if they get hacked, you're the one to blame.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
probably have most of the information more than the CEO. Yeah.
yeah, you know, that's the attitude, but it's also incorrect. You know, you can't be blaming the CISO because security is a team sport. Everybody has a responsibility to ensure that they are being secure. And sometimes, you know, or people push back on security because it's like, oh, no, it's going to disrupt this and that. So it's a balance. It is a balancing act. So, and a lot of times people make decisions where essentially they're accepting risk. But sometimes it doesn't get articulated. Okay, no. Be cognizant. Yeah, you can have this. You can do it this way. We can make an exception for you. But you are essentially accepting risk on behalf of the organization. Are you willing to accept that? You know? So, yeah, the CISOs can only do so much sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Sure. That's profound. And let's talk about transformational leadership, because I think that's one thing in the position that you are, that you have to be a leader.
Mm.
What are some of the core principles that you use in your leadership style?
Integrity as a value is very key for me, right? I mean, the alignment between what you say and what you do, that is so key. You want to follow somebody who has integrity, right? And my leadership style, some people, I would say it's more collaborative, because I believe in getting the right answer. Doesn't matter where it comes from, right? The right answer can come from the most junior person or mid or senior person in an organization, or even elsewhere. You know, when you come in with the thought that you're always right, you have all the answers, it sort of affects how you lead and how people perceive you and how you also do things. In this day and age, the sort of leadership style where you stand on top of a hill and be like, I know everything, follow me. That's not it. Things change so much, you know. What people thought they knew a year or two ago, how much disruption did AI bring? You know? So you've got to be able to know where to get the answers.
That's profound. And as we bring the interview to a close, what does the future look like for cybersecurity? What do you think the next, I almost said 10, but I'm thinking things are changing so quickly, 2, 3, 5 years looks like? And what will be important for the companies that lead in those next few years?
Sure. So security, it's got to go from just being something that companies worry about down to the individual level, right? We all need to be well-versed in what cybersecurity is, right? And I started off with making an example about my son who has a device and he has access to the internet on it, and I'm tracking it and all that sort of things. The reality is we have a lot of parents that don't have that. You've given your child a device and you've given the world access to your child. And the world is a great place, but there's also a lot of evil in it, right? So we need to be cognizant that for us to participate in this new digital era comes with risks. You can't enjoy all the benefits without the risks that it comes. So you need to understand, if something new comes in, you got to start thinking, okay, what risk does it introduce? You know, personal safety is such a key thing that a lot of people don't think about, right? When you look at your device, you know, do you look at your settings? Do you look at your location settings? On your social media? Do you look at what you post? You know, do you realize that in one image, how much information you can give off? People don't know things like that, right? I mean, there's a practice called open source intelligence, where essentially they use any publicly available information, sometimes private, to actually get to the bottom of things. And you can give people an image or photo and they can tell you exactly where it was taken, what device took that photo. And people don't know those things. So the digital footprints that you're starting to leave now will be very key in the future, right? As we get into this world where they realize data is the new oil, you sort of leaving footprint of data in everything that you do digitally, and you need to be aware of that.
That's profound. So basically, human beings will also need the services of cybersecurity.
Yes, in a way, yes. I would say yes. And obviously, there are things you can do in a personal capacity that will help you in this day and age. So, yeah, do a bit of research. What I can also do, I can also leave some links that you can put in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
To some tools that people can actually look at and actually help make themselves secure. One of them is there's this website called Have I Been Owned? Where essentially you enter your email address and it tells you if it's been involved in a hack.
Cool.
Yeah, so if you have an ex-service provider that use your email address and they've been breached, and now your details are out there, right? That database sort of contains that. It tells you, okay, this hack of this company exposed your information. So definitely don't reuse passwords. There's the family members I talk to till this day. I'm like, please don't use the same password for everything. Don't do it, right? There are password managers or password vaults that you can use these days where it can store all of those, so you don't have to write it on a sticky note and put it on your screen where everyone can see. So,
that's profound. And I have seen one of those password managers that allow that, and I think you're very right. We need to start using those sort of things to protect ourselves. I wanted to ask about Apple, because I think the age that I grew up in, I had a computer which had a Norton antivirus. I remember it very well because it used to take so long to load, and I just knew that I had this thing. And when I started to do well, I got myself an Apple. And when I got myself an Apple device and when I was there, the guy kept telling me the price, and I kept saying, okay, I hear the price, but I need to budget extra so much for the antivirus. And he said, you don't need an antivirus. I said, what do you mean? And I think this was about 2015, 2014. About 10 years ago. And he says, well, Apple devices don't have antiviruses. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. I've always wanted to know what did Apple do differently that we're no longer in the antivirus world? And do other laptops still have antiviruses?
So what they did differently was they owned more of the value chain, right? Where with other service providers, where they buy hardware in this place and you get the software from this place of the operating, and you get other software that runs on it from different place. Apple tries to lock everything in, right? That's why it's hard for you to just open up an Apple device and just, try to sort and fix things. It's locked down to the hardware level. Everything is almost as Apple as can be. So that's essentially where it came from. So it's difficult for people to tinker with it. Not impossible. So when someone tells you don't need an antivirus on your MacBook, I don't know, because I use a MacBook and we've got security in there because it's not 100%. There's no such thing as 100% security. So if you really care about whatever's on there and security is a thing for you, I'd put security on that. Doesn't mean you don't need it. That's incorrect.
That's profound. So much that we've learned today. I think in closing, what's the one thing that you want to be remembered for? When people remember you, what's that one thing that you want to be remembered?
Sure. But just one thing. Yeah, I think I was a great example, and I've lived a beautiful life with the family, and I've left a legacy for the family to be proud of, there's lots of things where you're like, I want to leverage my skills and make the digital environment safer and help improve, the future through education. That's all good and well, but it's all got to start at home, right? It's got to start at home. And for me, I just want to make sure that, they're proud of me.
Wow. What a powerful session. I'm sure you all learned so much. I definitely have learned so much. And please do check out the links at the bottom if you want to learn more. And thank you so much for joining us in the For This Reason podcast. And thank you for that powerful, insightful interview.
Thank you for having me.